So does the former president have a case? Let's ask Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, author of The Case for Vaccine Mandates, and Newsmax analyst, Alan Dershowitz. Sir, great to have you on.
Alan, Trump's lawsuit claims that James's investigation violates his constitutional rights. Does that have any merit, and how likely is it that the ruling would go in his favor on that?
Well, there are two questions. Does it have merit? The answer is clearly yes. This is one of the worst abuses I have seen in 55 years of practicing of elected prosecutors. You know, we're the only country in the Western world, the only country in the history of the Western world that ever elected prosecutors. And when you have a prosecutor who ran on the platform, I'm going to be a pain in the rear end. He's going to know my name. I'm going to get him. That's not the way prosecution ought to work. This is a disgrace to the legal system. She ought to be disciplined and disbarred for using her office to settle political scores and to get herself reelected. Now, that's the first question. So they have a claim. Will the courts have the courage to stand up to a prosecutor and say enough is enough? I don't know the answer to that. It depends on the judge. It depends on the quality of the legal brief. But the case is an extremely strong one.
Well, Alan, it also depends on the state. And we know New York is very liberal. And you know that James also, this attorney general, also has political aspirations to possibly run for governor in New York. But I also want you to take a listen. We've seen Trump's lawsuit claims that her investigation is the result of this long exhibited political bias against him. Here's a clip from 2018. Take a listen.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
I love it. He probably does already.
Well, this isn't justice. This is mob rule. This is what happens in Cuba. This is what happens in China. This is not what should happen in the United States, where people run for office, go on television, get laughs. I love you, because we're going to get Trump. We're going to get Trump. That's not due process. Imagine if it wasn't we're going to get Trump. It's we're going to get Biden. We're going to get Obama.
Right.
We're going to get Clinton. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And this doesn't pass the shoe on the other foot test. You cannot allow the criminal justice system to become weaponized for political purposes. And I tell you, Letitia James is, for me, the paradigm, the most extreme case of obvious bias by a prosecutor. She ought to be investigated by the Bar Association, and she ought to be seriously disciplined, if not disbarred. No lawyer should be doing and saying what she is saying about a potential defendant in either a civil or a criminal case. Compare it to the way in which the district attorney of New York has handled that case. I don't necessarily agree with everything he's done, too, but he's done it in a much more dignified way. She is so undignified. She brings the law into contempt. And people, when they see her make statements like that, say, this is not the law. This is just political weaponization. And that's not what a district attorney or an attorney general should be doing.
What do you make of her accusation that Trump is seeking to delay her investigation into his business dealings?
Well, if you're seeking to delay, you don't bring a lawsuit. He's brought a lawsuit. He wants to bring the case to the fore. He wants to have a court quickly make a decision about whether her actions are proper. They are not proper. Whether they're illegal, whether they rise to the level of a constitutional challenge, that's up to the courts. But I can tell you, as a professor at Harvard Law School for 50 years and taught legal ethics for 35 years, this is a situation where what she is doing is clearly unethical, unprofessional, and in violation of the obligation of prosecutors. She ought to go back and read what some of the great prosecutors in history, Robert Jackson, said the role of the prosecutor is. The role of the prosecutor is not to get people. It's to do justice. She is not in the justice business. She is in the political gotcha business.
Yeah, that's so true, Professor. And I think you got to remember, like, her political aspirations are real. She's not going to just stop at Attorney General. She wants to make her case that she is going for something bigger and broader, and knows that if she can get the big fish, which is President Donald Trump, and basically indict him, that would be a big, what I would say, political victory for her. But thank you, Professor, so much for your insight.
Thank you.
If I said it, I meant it. Bite my tongue from